Hello, and welcome to the Unconventional Path, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Stories and Ideas. I'm Bela Musits. We launched our first episode of this podcast back in September of 2018, when Mike and I were still professors at Clarkson University. Since then, we built an archive of over 180 episodes, filled with some incredible insights. Mike and I actually spent 4 months trying to use AI to summarize and theme these archives. But honestly, the results just did not meet our standards for you. So we're doing something better. We're hand-selecting classic episodes that directly complement some of our current episodes. So today's reissue features Mark Compeau, originally released in May of 2020. I've paired this with our most recent conversation with Tony Martinello from episode 183. Both of these individuals have mastered the art of the second career. If you've ever wondered how to reinvent yourself and launch a new chapter, these 2 episodes together are your roadmap. A quick note, this was originally recorded as an audio only, so our video viewers will just see images. So let's dive back in to our original conversation with Mark Compeau. Welcome to the Unconventional Path, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Stories and Ideas. Hi, I'm Bela Musits, former 3-time entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and now the David D. Ray Professor of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Clarkson University in Potsdam, New York.
And I'm Mike Wasserman, Professor of International Management at the Münster University of Applied Sciences in Münster, Germany. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoy the podcast. The two of us want to take the lessons that we've learned over the past 3 decades as entrepreneurs, investors, managers, and professors, and leverage our network of interesting friends, former students, business partners, and others we've met along the way in our life's journey to bring you interesting stories, ideas, and insights into innovation, entrepreneurship, and the people that take unconventional paths to find happiness at work and in life.
Before we get to today's guest, who is Mark Compeau, a quick thank you to our sponsors, Clarkson University
and the Münster University of Applied Sciences. And now let's jump right into it with Mark Compeau. And by the way, we apologize if there's a little bit more background noise today than usual in that we recorded this live at Mark's restaurant, Jake's, in Hannawa Falls, New York. Let's get right to it. Hi, this is Mike Wasserman, and I am in Münster, Germany, as per my normal location. And today I'm very pleased to be connected electronically with beautiful Hannawa Falls, New York, where Bela Musits is with Mark Compeau for today's interview. Bela, Mark, how are you guys doing?
Terrific, Mike.
Yep, we're doing well. Nice snowy day here in upstate New York.
Excellent. It's nice to hear that you're getting ready for a white holiday and that there's a little snow on the ground. I'm sure you're thrilled, being the outdoorsman that you both are. It's a nice, warm, I think, 45 degrees here in Münster, which is much better suited for my life of an indoorsman and a non-winter sports enthusiast. But enough about that. So I'm really excited today to introduce Mark Compeau. Mark, you're going to have to help me with the dates, but I know that you have taught at Clarkson University entrepreneurship, innovation, marketing, going on, close to 20 years now?
Yeah, next fall will be my 20th year.
Okay, so I was pretty close there. And currently you are the owner of Jake's on the Water, and that's been open, I'm going to say 3 years?
June 1st will be 5 years.
5 years. I was off
big
there.
Big milestone.
Okay. And I know I'm going to let you describe your kind of rich entrepreneurial history, but you have had what I would call a very interesting career path so far. And both Bela and I thought you would be an amazing guest on this show because we focus on people with interesting career paths. And we focus on people who are interested in small business and entrepreneurship and innovation. And we really, neither of us could think of a more perfect person than you to be on the show.
Okay, so yeah, that's an interesting segue.
So I think. Let me just interrupt.
Yeah.
A great thing is people don't know what Jake's on the Water way is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, let me start. Let me go back a bit as quick as I can and tell you that when I was in grade school, I was always the winner of the fundraising contests, right? I was the guy that always sold the most magazine subscriptions, and I was always the guy that sold the most Christmas cards, and that was what got me all fired up. All the neighbors knew every Christmas that here I came, and I always had the catalog out figuring out which prize I was going to redeem because I was definitely going to break a record that year.
Here comes little Marky.
Here he comes. Yep, that was me. And I didn't know it then. I had no idea what that meant then and the impact that desire to sell was going to have on my future. My father was a self-made guy, and I always admired that. He started an architectural firm. And we bootstrapped our way through my early childhood, and I understood what that meant. And I listened to dining room conversations about startup and stress and failure and success, and I caught the bug at an early age, for sure. I knew people said, "What are you going to do with your life?" And my answer was always the same. I always would say, "I'm going to be playing golf and making money, and I'm not a very good golfer." And I said that at a young age. I wanted to be independent. I knew that about myself. So I applied to Syracuse University. I was going to go be my dad's kid and being an architect and take over his firm. And they didn't accept me because I dropped French as a senior. And the policy there was if you drop a class, we just don't get in. My grades were good enough, but...
So is this architectural school?
Yeah, I was going to go be an architect, right? Because that's what you do. My dad was successful. He was independent. I could draw pretty good, and I worked there in the summers, and I was a good employee, and so that's what I'll do, and I didn't get in. And so the journey began, right? And again, I knew for sure, I didn't know what I would do. I had no idea what I was going to be, but I knew for sure I was going to be independent, and I was going to be self-made, and that was always a priority. Went to SUNY Potsdam. You know why? I was dating a girl who was going to Clarkson, and there was this other school across the river there, and they were. And I looked at a pile of recruitment letters for lacrosse because I was a pretty good lacrosse player, and West Point was the one that I should have taken. Still kick myself for that one. But I went to SUNY Potsdam, and before the first semester ended, she broke up with me. And so here I am up in Potsdam, New York, and I had no idea what I was going to do, but I was sure I was going to do it independently. Thought about transferring to UNLV for a while. And senior year.
Oh, and you had two already. You had two failures, right? You had your failed plan A to go to Syracuse,
yep.
Right? You had failed plan B to go with the girlfriend.
Yep.
And I would argue that these are good training experiences, as hard as they are, I'm sure, to be 17, 18, 19 years old at the time and go through all these things. But, right, entrepreneurship, having failures, overcoming these things. Did you have some sense that this was a moment of resilience, or were you just like, oh, this sucks and I'm just going to figure out what's next?
Well, Mike, that's the first time I've ever thought about those two events as failures, but you're absolutely right. I'm honestly waiting for the failure, right? We teach this stuff, and we talk about the value of failure, and I'm terrified of failure for sure. I mean, that's what we do. We live in fear of that failure, and I'm waiting for it to happen, but you're right.
You already did.
That's why. Thank you. Good. I'm so relieved now to discover that my failures are behind me. They just were disguised a little
Everybody
bit.
lives happily ever after. This is the best podcast ever, isn't it?
All right. Thanks for your time, Mike. Have a good Christmas.
Yep, have a good one. Right? Okay, so you're at SUNY Potsdam.
Yep. Floundering.
Did you study this stuff?
No. I studied industrial labor relations because that sounded businessy, and that was union management negotiations, and I hated every minute of it. But I needed to get that degree because that's what you do, and I'm somehow going to leverage this to become independent. And I have a summer job at a hotel as a bartender, and I did a really good job there and made great money, and the owner of the hotel just gave me total independence and let me kind of run that place, or really run the place. And I came back in early my senior year and went to a local bar restaurant and said, you need me. And Larry Hazen, we all know it, the locals know Larry. He's a legend in the community, and he hired me and took a shot at me. And I ran the bar. Ended up, before I was finished my senior year, running the whole place. I was hiring, I was firing, I was buying, I was scheduling. And I learned how good I was at that. And so there became my independence. I said, I can do this really well. But I recognized that I needed to have a bit of a portfolio there. So I graduated from SUNY Potsdam with a degree in industrial labor relations and went to work for Larry Hazen for $500 a week. And I had to negotiate that rate pretty aggressively. And I think the outcome was if I promised to work 60 hours a week, he'd pay me that $500 a week. And I learned a lot. I ran that business and I learned a lot. But I still wasn't independent enough. And there was a space available across the street, a little tiny 500 square foot spot for $500 a month. And I learned then how much the college students loved the tchotchke, the T-shirts and the hats. So I worked out with all the suppliers that I met through Larry Hazen, and I opened up a shop called The Brewery selling Budweiser logoed material. I had shirts and towels and key bottle openers and you name it.
But just kind of souvenirs and tchotchke stuff, not
souvenirs
that
and
was
tchotchke. It's embarrassing to talk about it now as I look back on it, but at that time in my life,
you're 21.
I'm independent, and I'll tell you the truth. And my wife makes fun of me about this all the time. Still today, she says, remember that day there was a Saturday, and at that point I remember saying, if we could bring in $100 a day, we're going to be rich. And we on a Saturday we brought in $100 by 11 o'clock, so we closed the shop and went to a beer blast. True story. We really did. Well, that was a good enough day, so off we go. We're going to go have some fun with the college students in the area, and that's what we did.
So I just want to go back to the Syracuse thing for a second. So
Yeah.
you had thought about architecture for a long time, it sounds like.
Yes.
And this one no from Syracuse just totally changed that track? Or did you apply to other architecture schools?
No, my father, who was incredibly successful, built a wildly successful firm, went to a 2-year SUNY school, and he called the dean there. And he had such respect at the school and said, my son, I think would be a good addition. And the dean said, he's accepted unconditionally. So my dad said, listen, I've got it all set up. You can go here. And I don't know why I rejected that. I don't know if it was because my dad got it for me or if it because it wasn't Syracuse. But I rejected that notion, and I said, maybe it was time for me to be independent, maybe. But I said, no, I got a different plan.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated by the decisions we make in life. At some point in time, they're oftentimes not well thought out. They're sort of just off the cuff, but they have a huge influence on sort of where our life goes, whether it be a relationship or whether it be a career or where you go to college, et cetera. It's kind of fascinating to me. At least I know for me it's that way.
But you got to own them, right?
You got to, absolutely. You got to own it.
Good or bad, you got to own them. And I think as I wrap up my first semester here and I think about the impact that we as faculty have on our students, I think that's one of the important lessons that we share with them is that the decisions are all yours. But they're all yours, right? So if they're good for you, and own that and celebrate that. But if they're bad, they're on you, right? And that decision was certainly on me. And I try to look back with no regret. I think West Point would have been good for me. And if I think back on regret, I think I would have been a good cadet, and I think it would have been a really good thing for me. But I wouldn't have met my wife, and the path would have been different.
The whole path is different
Yeah.
on that little decision.
Yeah, for sure.
It's remarkable.
For sure. So I had this business selling T-shirts and commodities, trinkets really is all it was, and that was a fun time for sure because it was so simple. Oh my God, life was so simple. I didn't know it then. A customer stumbled in with this idea about brewing your own beer at home. This home brewing fad was really hot then. We're talking about 1987. So we jumped on that bandwagon and we built We built a thriving business around home brewed material. We sold to all 50 states before computers and shipping and Amazon were even a thought then. And we had some inventions, and we got patents, and we sold cool stuff in that really small niche industry. And
So you're selling equipment to home brewers.
yeah. So the title of the brewery was around beer paraphernalia. So the home brewing phenomenon fit nicely into that, and that's where we ended up really growing the business. I mean, we really grew the business. We became very quickly a leader in distributing home brewing products to that person, that niche market. And the funny thing is, I never made a batch of beer in my life. I wasn't into it. I was into being independent. I was into selling stuff. I never mailed a Christmas card, but I sold a ton of them, right? And here I am finding this opportunity and chasing that opportunity to try to be independent and grow a firm around this idea, but no interest in the idea. And it worked out. So we grew that to the point where I met more people and ended up buying some property.
So before you go there, I think this is another sort of interesting thing to highlight. Oftentimes you hear about pursuing your passion. Someone loves brewing beer, or they love skiing, or they love some endeavor, and they try to build their career around that. My conclusion is you love selling stuff.
I did.
Your adrenaline popped when someone purchased something. So it's not that you love the microbrewing business. You loved selling stuff to people who were willing to buy microbrewing stuff.
I love selling stuff to people who
Yeah,
would buy
tchotchkes
stuff.
and T-shirts.
Doesn't matter what it was.
Doesn't matter what it is. Even
Yeah.
when you were a kid, right?
Right when I was a kid.
That theme's consistent.
Opportunity recognition. I mean, if we go back to the teaching kind of moment, right? All the common thread is opportunity recognition. Mark, you saw an opportunity, right, and jumped on it, right? Used your resources. I'm using things that I think you taught me, right? But saw the opportunities and pulled the resources together to make it happen.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. And I never made any pretense about that. So a customer would come in and ask questions about how to brew this great batch of beer, and I would tell them what I knew because someone else had told me that. I wouldn't tell them what I knew because I did it, because I never did it. And I was part of the sell. You know, you had to be an educated seller. Didn't mean you had to be passionate about the product.
Right.
And that worked out for me.
Right.
So property became the next thing, and we grew property. Leverage. I learned how to leverage. I learned how to measure equity, how to grow equity through property acquisition, and I got really good at that. So my game was to continue to buy property without ever spending any money out of my pocket, and then to generate revenue through those properties to pay debt down, to build equity.
So this is rental property or
Lots
some kind
of rental
income,
property.
income
Yep.
producing properties.
We buy one and buy it on a deal and instantly have equity, leverage that equity to buy another one that was on a deal. And we kind of had, we had a couple of partners involved in that time of my life, and we became known as the people who would buy stuff if it was a good deal. And so people were coming to us all the time with, here's a house, the poor woman lost her husband, and it's a great property, but she doesn't want it anymore. We thought of you. And so, all right, what's it appraised for? What's she willing to take for it? Is that within the 20% limit that the bank's asking us for? So if we can grab it and the equity position is enough that satisfies the 20%, let's go. If you're going to mow one lawn, mow 10. If you're going to plow one driveway, plow 10. And so we grew a bit of a real estate empire with that philosophy and some young energy to make that happen.
And this is all in upstate rural New York?
Right here. My whole deal was if I can't touch it, I don't want to own it. And that was just my approach. Was it had to be right here. I need to know the property really well. And I'll tell you that was pretty important because the ice storm of 1991 hit Potsdam pretty hard. It devastated our community. We were without power for 21 days. And because I knew the property, it was close enough, the property had enough connections, property survived, and we made huge money on that ice storm. We had a laundromat. And all the power workers needed their laundry done. So it didn't matter what the price was. They were they were willing to pay. So we built equity around laundry for a bit there. There you go. Sell. And then the Clarkson career arrived, and I found some real opportunity there to go to Clarkson and spend time with students, and I really enjoyed the time with them.
So talk a little bit about how that sort of appeared.
Okay.
Well,
so a home brewer, his name was Fred Menz. He was a passionate home brewer, and he was the dean of the School of Business at Clarkson. And he said to me, I don't know what he picked up on, whether it was the passion for business or the passion to sell or whatever it was, but he said, I got this first year class that I'm struggling to get covered, and I think you'd be great at it. Would you give it a try? And I said, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a fantastic opportunity. And I did it, and I loved it so much that it turned into a full-time career, and that was 20 years ago now. So the idea about taking these young minds and sharing with them the opportunity that comes from being an entrepreneur and thinking about opportunity and becoming independent was attractive and super rewarding, really, really rewarding. And it's pretty close to when I met you, Mike. Not long after I arrived at Clarkson, I met you, and together we shared our enthusiasm for business, and boy, the outcomes are pretty exciting when you think about some of our young students who have built great things.
Who are now getting old, which is really frightening.
Yeah.
Right? I think you're going to see some of our students' kids pretty soon walking through the door.
Yeah.
From those early days.
Then it's time to leave for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm at Clarkson, and I'm loving teaching, and I'm a goal-oriented guy, so we chase goals. We want to be ranked, and we want all these exciting things to happen. And an editor at Forbes says, geez, we got this tiny little school in upstate New York that's ranked in multiple programs. How the heck are they doing that? And he gives me a call, and I meet in New York with him, and it was an exciting lunch with him. And he says, we have ignored the small business owner for too long. Would you write a column to those people? And for 7 years, I wrote a column, Dear Mom and Pop. And that was just the tiny issues that little tiny Main Street entrepreneurs who are maybe making $100,000, maybe $500,000 a year are wrestling with became my obsession. And that was really fun. It turned into a course we called My Small Business 101, and we put over 1,000 entrepreneurs in a rural upstate New York through this course about the realities of small business. And I never forget an economic developer called it a rah-rah course. And that's exactly what it was. Yeah, it was. We can do this together, and we got to fight the good fight, and we got to keep our chin up. But we can build these main streets, and we can beat these Walmarts and these Amazons together if we stay focused on what we're trying to build together. So that was a really interesting time to be so obsessed with those little guys that I think means so much to so many communities.
It's the backbone of many communities.
Well, and they're coming back, right? They're coming back, and that's exciting to think about. We got nationally ranked in entrepreneurship at Clarkson. We got endowed. We have a wonderful donor, David Ray, who's meant a lot to all three of us, who believed in what we were doing and came through with the funds that we needed to do to grow it. And I'll never forget sitting in the Lowe's parking lot, and my phone beeped and said, "You're ranked in the top 20." And I looked at my wife and I said, "Look at that." And she's like, "Good for you." And I said, "Well, time to move on." We did what we set out to do. Goals were achieved. Time to go do something else. And there was this little property in Hannawa Falls that sat on the waterfront that had been neglected for far too long, that she and I tried to purchase several years before, but life got in the way. And I said, "I think I want to go do that again." And she said to me, "Either we're going to do this or we're always going to wonder if we should have." So we struck a deal with the owners, and we bought a dilapidated old building that needed a whole lot of TLC. Here we sit, 5 years later, and Jake's on the water. That's about to do 1.75 million in revenue in a tiny little upstate New York town with 40 employees, and throwing $500,000 a year back into the community. And I'm older and exhausted and wonder what the heck I'm doing here. But I know exactly that this is what I had to do. I had to circle back and prove that I could pull off the big one. That's where we are.
Yeah, and I like it's almost back to where you began, back where you were running the bar for Larry Hazen, right? It's like, it's this interesting full circle, I think, that's neat. And this is where the podcast doesn't do things justice. And I'm sure a lot of visitors will have, or a lot of our listeners will have a hard time imagining what we're talking about. So I'll try to visually describe the setting a little bit. And it's what I would call a small lake or a large pond, beautiful treed rural area. Winding 2-lane road runs in front of it. And what was this dilapidated house is now this beautiful space with an outdoor deck for the summertime, a boat launch where you can canoe up, right, and go to the bar and grab a drink. Beautiful wood floors, beautiful fixtures, a bar. The Amish guy built the bar for you out of local hardwood. Beautiful ironwork, windows floor to ceiling, looking out over this beautiful view, 4 seasons. And just a really miraculous space, considering what was there before, and really what else is going on. And then, I think the challenges of, it's 10 minutes from town?
Yeah, and right? Just for your listeners, if you go to jakesonthewater.com, you get a pretty good visual of the location that we're in right now. I think there's some photos there that'll help you see that. We're like 10 minutes from town. We're 7 to 10 minutes from 2 universities and 10 minutes from a major employer that is our hospital too. So the population is here for sure. If I could go back though to the space, we love the space. I have no idea how to run a restaurant. I'd never run a restaurant. I really literally can't cook Campbell's soup without burning it. I don't know if it's milk or water, what you put in that thing, but I always fail to make that happen. But I just love this property. And I brought my father, the architect, up, and I said, Dad, let's take a look at this property. I really think I want to buy it. And we drove around it because the owner didn't know we were interested yet. And we kind of sneaked around and went across the lake and peered at it from binoculars and stuff. And I remember we parked in the parking lot, and I said, what do you think, Dad? He goes, I got to be honest with you, son. You sure bulldozing it's not an option? I said, Dad, there's too many memories in that space. We got to save the space. And he said, okay, you got to start with the foundation, and we'll go from there. So we literally ripped every bit of this building out that we could. We had no electrical, no plumbing. We had no insulation. We tore the roof off. We tore one complete section off. And there was a day in January when we were burning wood in a fireplace that should have burnt the place down because the flue wasn't even open. I found out later. Trying to stay warm. And I begged my wife to come out because we had put our first wall up. And so there was progress. And she came in and begrudgingly came in, stomped her feet off at the door for her snow and walked over to the fireplace and said, what do you want? I said, look. She said, can you see it? And she goes, well, can I see what? And I said, well, 4 walls and a dream. And she goes, look to your right. It's only 3 walls. And she walked out and left. And she didn't come back for a month. But that was the most exciting day to me, I think. If I think back on it, we'd stripped it down to nothing. And in my mind, I could see the engagement that happened here last night. I could see the graduation celebrations. I could see the baby showers and the champagne glasses tinking to celebrate a birthday or whatever's happening. I ignored the cost, but I knew it was going to work, and there was a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of people that said you're never going to make it work, and then when the parking lot was full for a few consecutive days, those were the same people that pulled in and said, well, I knew somebody was going to make this work, but the reward for us both has never been financial. We're proud to own the asset, and we own it with the bank. The pride comes from those moments, when we get it right. And we've gotten it wrong a lot. But when you get it right and you look over at that table and you see those people who are celebrating a moment that they may not have had the opportunity to celebrate if we hadn't had the courage to do what we did, that's pretty exciting. And those employees, I get thank you notes from employees when they buy a new car. That is incredibly rewarding to get a note like that. And I don't know if the word's out that I love that, but I get that all the time. It's my new couch I bought, thank you. Standing in front of that fireplace when we only had 3 walls and a dream, that's pretty exciting. That's where we are today, and it's successful. Continues to have its cash flow challenges, and it continues to have personality challenges. And we're still trying to develop our brand and deal with the changing competition, and we're changing regulations every day. But I think we're over the hump. I think we're at the point now where we can feel pretty good about what it's going to be for a long time.
One of the things that impresses me, Mark, and I was, being 10 minutes away from everything, is you made yourself part of the community, and the community comes to you, right? Almost everybody who comes to your restaurant has to drive 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes to get out there, and they do. And you've created a place for people where they can celebrate, or where they can relax, or where they can enjoy a meal or a drink. And you created this atmosphere that has become kind of a magnet. And I think that's really a special and unique challenge.
Yeah, but right? I think if you think about more urban environments, a 10 or 15 minute drive is nothing. Mm-hmm. But the reality of our environment is that we're what you'd call a destination. So we have a thriving and beautiful downtown environment with lots of restaurant options. And the advantage those restaurants have is that they have flexibility with their hours, because if someone comes to have dinner at Maxfield's, for example, and then they've chosen to take Sundays off, well, the customer could go around the corner to one of that family's other restaurants that is open. Here, if someone drives out here, and the perception is it's a drive, when in reality it's really not, and we've chosen to take a night off, the impact on that is significant. They aren't going to come back because we disappointed them, and they're not quite sure what our hours are. So the trade-off is our commitment to being open all the time, and the cost of that. But being out here and being independent and being able to take advantage of the beauty of this area and avoid the tax that is the village tax does give us some advantage.
What have been some of the challenges that you overcome? I mean, I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast are people who are thinking about starting a small business, and you started successfully multiple. What are some of the challenges that you've seen that maybe you can pass on some words of advice to the listeners? I
don't ever want to. I always worry about throwing a wet blanket on a fire. So if you're passionate about an idea and you've done enough research to understand that there's a demand that exists, and you've done enough work to feel good about your numbers, because the numbers are always the key, off you go. But the biggest thing I see, and the biggest struggle that we have had and continue to still have today, is the cost of growth. It costs so much money to grow. My projections to the bank when we pitched this idea was, maybe we'll do maybe $400,000 in the first year, and by year 5 would be great if we were doing $1 million. Well, that's the giant number that we're all excited to be able to say. We did $1.2 million in our first year, and almost went out of business. I mean, really, we're precarious there for a bit, because the cost of that rapid growth was something that I never saw coming.
So, can you be more specific about what those costs were?
Payroll is massive, and we have committed, and I'm not ashamed to say it, we've committed to always doing everything 100% above board. Everything we do is according to the law that we need to abide by, and that means every employee is on the books, and we pay every single tax we need to pay. It's a massive, massive expense. Massive expense.
So one of the things is the expense comes before the revenue.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to hire the employee, and that expense is instantaneous and it's full, and the revenue is ramping up more slowly.
We didn't know how to be efficient. We didn't know how the heck do you serve, here's a guy that's, again, can't open a can of Campbell's soup well, who's about to serve 180 people many nights in a row. I have no idea how to do that. I'll never forget the first night we're in business, and all of my servers are huddled around me who are experienced, saying, okay, we're here to get our tip outs. Like, well, what is that? Well, you got a lot of our money on credit cards. Well, we want it. Like, well, time out. Before you take money out of my drawer, I got to understand this. What's this mean? You know, and and come to find out, not only that needs to be part of their paycheck, but they need to get taxed on that, right? Which is an expense that I incur to the tune of annually $70,000, and then I get it back as a tax credit in April. I don't predict that. I didn't see that coming.
So these are cash flow surprises.
Shocks, not surprises. Shocks, you know. Emptying the septic tank. Every time we empty our septic tank, and given our volume, that's depending on time of year, every 2 months, $800. To clean our Ansel system, which is required by the state of New York to be inspected 3 times a year at $180 an inspection, to clean it 3 times a year to be safe and in compliance is $700. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Every day there was some new surprise. CO2 to push the draft beer out of our system, $280 a month, right? And these don't sound like big numbers, but you add 50 of these up. Silverware, dishwasher detergent, you know, like you don't plan on the cost of dishwasher detergent. It's close to $400 a month.
That's a lot of meals you got to sell.
That's a lot of meals in an economy that isn't wealthy, right? And so how do you assure a price point where people will come back because we need them to come back that covers those cash flow issues?
So one clear message is you really got to watch the numbers, right? You really got to watch. You really got to watch the numbers. So another question I have is, you're in the restaurant business. There's lots of restaurants. So how do you sort of position yourself in the market? This is one about finding your niche to give people a reason to come here versus going to other restaurants. I mean, people want a meal. So how do you position that for have people come here to get that meal versus go to other places?
And I understand that now. I got to be honest, I didn't understand that when we opened. I wanted to buy this piece of property. I knew that it was going to be beautiful, and I knew people would come here and eat, but I didn't care about what they ate. I didn't think that through, and it's crazy to say that now, but I didn't. And we're going to serve kind of pub food, and they'll come and get a burger and some wings, and off we go. That would have never made it. We could have never made it work on that because everybody's selling those products. We don't have, I think about your listeners, I think we don't have the kind of competition that many of them have in more urban areas, but we have competition. And fortunately for us, most of them are selling the same thing, chicken wings and burgers. It's a college town. We need to figure out how to be different. And I stumbled upon, serendipitously, an incredibly talented chef who understands how to make flavor happen. And that's become our thing. We're known for really great food that's sourced locally. But you know what? Sourced locally is a dime a dozen. Everybody's doing that. That's no big deal anymore. So we become known for a place where you can consistently get food that just tastes great. And we've got to figure out how to do that in a way that people can afford to come more than once a month. Right? Now, right, when May hits and it's graduation season and the water is so beautiful and people are coming from all over the place to come enjoy the atmosphere, not so hard. But November through February, we're relying on a much smaller population to enjoy great flavor at a price that they can afford. So it changes, you know. It's so complicated.
And how do you build that clientele? How does that work in this industry? Right. Some people think about, you know, we talk to students. Oh, I'm going to use social media to promote my idea. How does that work in reality for a business like this?
And again, I'm going to go back to our location is unique in that we're somewhat rural, but we have two colleges and a hospital. So you've got different dynamics. We've got a somewhat impoverished, somewhat rural community, and we've got some people of taste and affluence who are looking for a more fine dining experience. And how do you balance both of those? We got a burger on our menu every day, but we'll also serve. What are we? Trying to think of one of our more extravagant dishes. A bluefish. Someone said I never thought I'd see bluefish being served in Hannawa Falls, and I remember saying, no, we're not just serving it, we're selling out, right? But you just got to pay attention to who's coming in the door. Social media works for sure, but it's word of mouth here. It's someone saying, I found a great place, which means those first guests have to have a great experience. It takes time, more time than you'd think. Am I answering that?
Very good.
Yeah, it's complicated. We think about numbers all the time, and I want to help listeners think about that. Every dollar that comes in, you got to think about, out of that dollar, what are the costs? And we think about, in this business, what's called prime cost, which is the combination of your labor and your cost of goods sold. So the product that goes out the door with that purchase, whether it's you sell a T-shirt, it's the T-shirt, that's your cost of goods, or you're selling a burger, it's the cost of the ground beef and the bun and all the wraparound items and the bread service and all that goes with it. And you got to combine that with your labor. And we have to be below 65% on our prime cost. So 65 cents of every dollar is allowable to be profitable, to cover the rest of those costs, the dishwasher detergent and the septic tank pumping and the the CO2 and all those other costs I was talking about. And we watch it every day, every single day. And I've got a leadership team that's got accountability in those areas. And we sit down at this very table once a week on Thursdays, and I say, here's where we are month to date, here's where we are year to date. And, and together we wrestle with those numbers. And we didn't hit them this summer. It's always a balancing act. Your cost of goods sold goes up, your payroll goes down. Your payroll goes up, your cost of goods sold goes down. And I'm convinced, and I've challenged my team this summer to hold those two in check, and I know we can do it. And that's exciting to think about. And I had to get my leadership team to get excited about it because they're terrified of it. I'm like, this is exciting, we can do this, but it's it's a kind of a team effort to pull this off.
So talk a little bit about hiring. How do you think about hiring people? What's your process?
Yeah. In upstate New York, where we are, we don't call it a talent pool, we call it a talent puddle. Particularly in the industry that we're in. It's a different breed, and we're talking restaurants here. Let's be more generic. You're going to hire people, and you've got to recognize, and this is a lesson that I learned early on that was important, you've got to recognize what they're working for. They're working for a paycheck. That's it. End of story. If you're trying to find people that are going to be as passionate about your business as you are, best of luck. It's just never going to happen. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And I got caught up in that, and I couldn't understand why people wouldn't drop everything and run in because we were busy. Well, because they had a life, and I'd scheduled, and they committed to the schedule, but they didn't commit to being at my beck and call. They're working for a paycheck, but they're working to be in an environment they like to be in. And so my approach has always been to give them an environment they feel really good in, to pay them the best I can possibly pay them, and to be super grateful for what they give us. And that's paid off. You got to have people that give your guests a good experience. And if they don't feel good about what they're doing, it's just not going to happen.
So as you hire and interview people, the front end of the house, right, is very different, maybe personality-wise, in the back,
dramatic,
than the kitchen, so to speak. So talk a little about how you think about hiring those people and the characteristics you look for.
Okay, so I get an application. The first thing I do is I go on Facebook. And I'm not a Facebook guy. I mean, I think I have an account. I'm not sure, but I know I can get in there. And I look them up, and I see what they're all about. I see what makes them tick. What are their interests, and how do they present themselves? And you can learn a lot. And so the decision is based on what I see about who they seem to be. Is this the kind of person that would gel with our team? Because our team is perfect. And I really do believe that our team, They love to work together. When they're not at work, they're together because they just enjoy who they are as a team. So is this person going to fit or not? And when I think I got a good lead there, I'll interview them and just kind of get a vibe of what their motivation is. Why do you want to work here? And then we test them out. We call it working interviews. Everybody works 2 shifts with people who I think are great judges of whether they're going to fit or not. And after that 2 shifts, I check in with our team. And if they think they're a good fit, then I meet with the employee and I ask them if this is a good fit for them. Does this meet what you're trying to accomplish? And if it's a good match, off we go. But we've made lots of mistakes. But we've made a lot of good hires that way too. But if they don't pass the sniff test from the crew, never going to work.
You don't overrule that.
Never. And it's not a power struggle. It's just I know that dynamic is so important.
Yes. And they're good judges, probably.
Absolutely, yeah. I think in this business you get it or you don't. There's no gray area. You can't take someone that doesn't get what the chaos of a Saturday night at 7 o'clock is and teach that to them. You put them in a Saturday night at 7 o'clock, and if they thrive, off we go. If they don't, it's just not going to work. You can't train that. And every business is different.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Great. My last question.
Yeah.
I think we have listeners who are wondering whether they should take a leap and try something different and unique, right? Maybe they're working a corporate job. Maybe they've been out 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and they're thinking of trying something creative and entrepreneurial. What's your advice to those people?
I think there's a lot more to the question than that. I guess I would challenge them to understand why they're not content. Right? If you're not content at the current career because you're not taking home the money you think you ought to take home, I wouldn't do it. Right? It's just being honest. I can't think of any entrepreneur who's gotten rich real quick, and the challenges are significant. If you're not feeling fulfilled, which I think has always been important to me, if you're not feeling fulfilled by your career, and you think chasing something independent would be fulfilling, let's go, right? For sure. I'm always about not living with regret, and I'd hate to finish my career at a place I'm unhappy with because I'm feeling unfulfilled and never having given it a shot. There's a lot of legwork, and the reality of it is, as I said to students today, every day is a challenge. Every single day, there's some new roadblock you're going to bump into. Every single day. This morning I came in and the drain to our soda dispenser was plugged. And so I got out a coat hanger and I cleared the plug and off we went. And I thought, oh my gosh, if that's it today, what a great day. I'm going to accept that that's my challenge. Other days, last week we had a $2,500 real important piece of equipment go down and spent $1,500 trying to fix it before we realized we should have just bought another $2,500 piece of equipment, which is now in the kitchen. That's a challenge. It's no fun, right? But as I said to the students, once you get past the challenge, the excitement or the fulfillment that comes from having accomplished it, having worked your way through that roadblock and conquered it, that's rewarding. And that's entrepreneurship. That's every day, every single day.
Love it. Great advice. All right, I think we are well over time, but it was a very fast 45 minutes and a very great story to hear your path, Mark. Mark Compeau on the faculty at Clarkson University teaching entrepreneurship, marketing, whatever it is they need you to teach, you're there, which is great. Owner of Jake's on the Water in Hannawa Falls, New York. Look it up. It's worth the trip, and we appreciate your time. Bela, any last remarks, questions, complaints?
So I think there was one thing that really stuck out at me, and that was this entrepreneurial spirit about selling. And as I once heard a company say, their motto was, nothing good happens until a sale is made. And because that drives everything. And you clearly had this drive. And it's just, I mean, it's a common theme throughout when you were selling things in elementary school all the way to today. You're selling meals. And
Yeah,
you're
but I
figuring
gotta
out
say,
how to sell them.
like, I think it's super important that you're not selling to make money. I don't think, the result obviously will be profitability and at some point certainly some ability to do some fun things, but if you're selling to make money, it's a long road to hoe.
You're selling to fulfill a need.
You're selling to.
And the word need is multifaceted.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it, for sure. The need to pay the bills, the need to give your community something that they're proud of, the need to give other people a job that they feel good about, the need to be independent was always been huge for me. But yeah, it's a good way to say it. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, it's been fascinating, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you, Mark.
Thanks.
That was a great interview, Bela. Thanks for going to Jake's and hopefully snacking on something good and having a neat conversation with Mark, who, as he said, is a longtime friend of mine, somebody I've learned a lot from. But I thought, even knowing him for all these years, I learned a lot about him that I didn't know before, and there were a lot of great lessons that I think we can pull out of this. The first thing I thought that was really amazing was his ability to recognize opportunities. And it's almost intuitive with him that he found services that were needed, products that were needed that people would pay money for. Where do you think that comes from?
Boy, that's a great question, Mike. I don't really know. Is that something you are born with? Is it something you acquire or learn? I think to some extent, he's a person who's willing to take some risk. He's willing to try something new. I mean, if you look at him, right, he started selling stuff door to door when he was in school. Selling the magazine subscriptions for those fundraisers for the elementary school and the junior high and stuff.
And those kids drove me nuts when I was young, by the way. How do these kids do this? I was mortified of really looking at, going to the next door neighbor, right?
Yes.
And yet, yeah, there's always a couple of kids like Mark who just love this stuff and are great at it. And it's amazing. But yeah, he's right from the start, he was doing this, which is interesting. And that leads to another, I think, interesting thing about Mark is the businesses that he were in, the content of those businesses were not his passion. I think everybody else we've talked with, it's like, oh, I'm passionate about fabric, or I'm passionate about coffee, or what have you. And Mark's like, I like to sell things to people. I like to create value for people. I like to see satisfied customers. And that's transferable to lots of other industries if you can acquire the content-specific knowledge that you need, or the industry-specific knowledge that you need. Have you ever met people like this, Bela?
Very, very, very few. Most people are passionate about their concept or their idea or their technology. And Mark gets satisfaction from providing value to customers. A lot of other entrepreneurs that you come across get value and satisfaction from making the next iteration of their widget, or releasing the next version of their software. And so Mark, I think, and this skill that Mark has, I think, is absolutely critical to have a successful business. Successful entrepreneurs, successful businessmen all have this, because they understand without customers, you don't have a business. And I think the interesting thing about Mark is this is his key and primary asset that he has, is this ability to and desire to satisfy customers. And he doesn't really care all that much whether he's doing rental properties, or whether he's in a retail store selling T-shirts, or he's running a restaurant. He wants to provide value to customers. And I think in the long run, that is an important and critical and absolutely necessary characteristic for a successful business person to have.
And then he can drill down and kind of nail down the details of the business and succeed at the kind of the blocking and tackling. Is there what was your thoughts on that? Where he kind of learned the nitty gritty of the restaurant business without really having much in the way of experience in the industry.
So Mark has a bias for action. He never talked about, well, okay, I studied this industry for 9 months and I tried to figure out all the ins and outs of it. He sort of looked at it. He probably did do probably some more research into it than he let us believe. But at the same time, he stopped that at some point in time and took the first step to build and start his business, because he realized you learn so much more by doing than by actually studying. And I thought a great example of that was when he was talking about the restaurant business and having to get the septic tank pumped out every 3 months and having to get the exhaust fan system cleaned because of state regulations every 4 months. I will guarantee you things like that are never in a business plan for a restaurant unless the person worked in that restaurant business prior. And most people don't. They're starting their first restaurant and they overlook those expenses and costs. And I think that's also a good lesson. You only find those things by actually doing them. And one of the I was just going to say, Mike, one of the interesting things and one of the interesting lessons here is every industry has its subtleties. The numbers add up across various different industries. 2 + 2 is 4 everywhere. But each industry has little subtle things about it that you don't understand and you don't know unless you've worked in that industry. And this is a great example that Mark brought up on, getting the septic system pumped or meeting all of these regulations that most of which he never heard of before in his life. So that's why it's important to sort of reach out to someone. If you're thinking about starting a business in an industry you're not familiar with, reach out to someone who works in that industry or go intern there for a period of time. Get some experience and sort of understand.
Nice. Another thing that I thought was interesting with Mark was the kind of overcoming the obstacles that would find their way into his path. I thought, he didn't get into Syracuse School of Architecture, and the young woman he moved to Potsdam for broke up with him, and that didn't even faze him. He just kept plowing through it. I mean, I don't know, emotional mess sometimes maybe, right? And things like that would really throw me for a loop for quite a while. At least the 18-year-old version of me. Do you see that in other entrepreneurs? Is that a common trait, Bela?
Well, I think resiliency is important because life is full of, the entrepreneurial journey is full of many obstacles. But at the same time, I think you're absolutely right about Mark. I can think of many individuals who, want to be an architect or want to be a doctor and don't get into med school or don't get into architectural school, and then they're lost for 3 or 4 years. They're devastated because that was their dream. And I think Mark, again, going back to, I can provide customer satisfaction. I can make people happy across there's many different ways of doing that. I think is part of that strength that helps him move past those things. Let's see. Well, the other thing I want to say that I think is really interesting is, and I've experienced this, and maybe you have as well, that when you teach something, that's when you really learn it. And I think this is one of the great things that it works for Mark as well. He's teaching entrepreneurship. And by teaching it, I think he's learning more and more about entrepreneurship that then he can apply to his businesses and his endeavors.
Agreed.
All right. That was a good interview. I'm glad we did it. Hope our listeners really enjoyed that.
Well, we're really happy that you joined us in our podcasting adventure for this week, and we hope you found the last hour interesting and thought-provoking. We have, as usual, 2 small requests. 1, if you have questions about what we've discussed, suggestions about topics or potential guests, get in touch with us. Our email is bela.and.mike@gmail.com. And second, if you like what we're doing, hit subscribe or like on your podcast app, and even be radical and consider writing a quick review. If you know others that might find this interesting, please share us with them.
So that's it for this week. Thanks for spending time with us, and we look forward to you joining us in our next episode. Hey, Mike, see you next week.
Thanks, Bela. See you next week.
This podcast is produced for Mike and I by our friends at Busy Media of Schenectady, New York. They can be found at busymedia.co.